Hi everyone, welcome back to my lab and today's video in which I will be sharing my experience with the brand new Pat McGrath Labs Mothership Divine Rose eyeshadow palette. I'm going to be talking a little bit about the palette, showing you some swatches of course, giving you my thoughts about the launch, which was a little weird, and of course I'll share a demo of how I created the eye look. Before we get into all that, if you're new here, I'm Yori. Thank you for clicking on my video. Hopefully you'll enjoy it and consider subscribing by hitting that subscribe button, and don't forget to hit the bell so you're notified whenever I upload. Now without any further delay, let's go ahead and get into it. This palette originally launched exclusively on the Selfridges website. I'll talk about all that a little bit later when I show you the demo, but some people were able to purchase it from there. I did not. I tried to exercise a little self-control, so I resisted the urge to do so. A few days later, I did hear that the palette was going to be available on the Pat McGrath website, so I signed up for notices by email on her website, and I did get an email notice about a potential restock. So if you're curious about Pat McGrath launches, I do suggest you sign up for her newsletter. She emails fairly frequently regarding sales that are going to be going on as well as new launches, and if you're on the mail list, she will send you like an access code to purchase the palette a little bit early. Now of course those codes usually are leaked on Instagram, so maybe you may not want to join the mailing list, but I've always found it helpful to know for myself when the launches are happening. So I did sign up for the waiting list and I was able to purchase the palette a couple of hours ahead of the open launch for the product itself, which it did end up selling out, so I think it's an advantage to get in there a little bit early. The palette retails for $125, as do all of her larger Mothership palettes. Now this one is not labeled as a specific number. She has 6 palettes in the Mothership collection, which would make this the 7th, and I've seen it advertised as the 7th on certain articles online. However, on the packaging here, it just says Mothership Divine Rose, so it doesn't say anything about this being number 7, and as far as I understand it, it's supposed to be extremely limited edition, so perhaps she isn't going to assign a number to this one and do number 7 with the next launch. I'm not sure. The outer carton of course is beautiful, as all of her packaging is. It's in that envelope format with that sort of envelope kind of closure. The graphics on this one are particularly pleasing to me. I find them really beautiful. On the back side you have information about the palette. This one is made in Italy, 18-month shelf life. You have 10 shadows altogether, 13.2 grams of product, so a little over 1 gram per shade. When you open up the palette, there is an insert with the shade names of course. Now this one has some information on the back just about the brand in general. Those are your shade names, which are not printed on the palette itself, so of course you want to hold on to it. On the back side, this one is labeled simply Mothership. Again, it doesn't have a number, and there is a sticker that identifies this one as the Divine Rose palette. With the initial launches, the eyeshadow palettes weren't labeled, and that was a complaint that customers have, that they wouldn't be able to tell one from the other in terms of names. The Pat McGrath packaging is of course very luxe. It's a very heavy palette. You do have the beveled mirror, which comes with a protective cover. Usually I don't use the mirror in these palettes because it's just too heavy to hold up, honestly. And here are your beautiful shades. Now part of the reason why I wanted to resist purchasing the palette is because there are a few repeats here, and I'm using Temptalia's website as a resource, so definitely check that out if you're interested. The shade Skin Show Nude is a repeat, as is Rose Dusk, as well as Astral Solstice. Now Astral Solstice is a lovely shade. It's one that I'm wearing on my eyes today. I couldn't resist it, but this one is in the most recent Mothership palette that she released, which honestly wasn't that long ago. So did it warrant repetition in this palette? Debatable. In my opinion, no, because I own all of them. But if you own only a select few, then it may be nice for you to have it in this palette. So those 3 repeated shades, knowing that they're already in my collection, was part of the reason why I resisted buying the palette. I'm like, am I really going to pay $120 plus $30 shipping for 7 new shades, especially in this color family, which they're very muted, they're very neutral, and I love a good neutral eyeshadow palette, but I also have a lot of them already, so it's very hard for me to justify that price tag. Now when I learned about its launch on the Pat McGrath site, I decided to go ahead and purchase it, and she also gives like a 10% discount, which that 10% will cover the tax here in Illinois. So in the palette we've got 2 mattes, and those 2 mattes are going to be the shade Velouria here as well as Extreme Mahogany. They're very nice mattes. I love the Pat McGrath formula in terms of mattes, as well as all her other formulas really, but her mattes are really special. She doesn't include too many of them in her eyeshadow palette, so if you have all of the palettes, you're going to have a very nice range of her mattes at this point. I like these because this one is a little bit deeper and this one is definitely more of a mid-tone, so it gives you good transition and deepening tones if that's how you like to do your makeup. Then Skin Show Nude, Love Lace, and Rose Dusk are going to be your metallics and your quad of special shades here on the end. I swatched all of the shades for you so that you can see how they look. I'm definitely really interested in this Rose Venus shade here, which is really peachy. It has a really beautiful tone to it. There's something shaking in my palette. That's interesting. I'm not sure what's shaking in there, but it is definitely underneath the shades, and I don't think that there's any real way of getting in there without damaging the palette, so I'll just deal with the shaking. So hopefully you can see from the swatches, this swatch is beautiful. It's a very nice neutral color story, leaning more towards the cool tone, which is nice for something a little bit different. Let's go ahead and get into how I created this eye look, and I will share my final thoughts at the end. I've already primed my eye using the Anastasia Beverly Hills eye primer, and as you can see, it's really light. So basically I focus it on the lid and then I will blend it upward with my fingers so it fades a little bit towards my brow bone because it gets really light. I really think they need more shades because I love the primer, but I would like it in a slightly darker tone. As you can see, we're going to be creating a halo eye today. I'm going to start with the shade Valoria and the Sonia G Classic Crease Brush. I'm using the new Sonia G brushes today. I will be reviewing them and I'll probably use snippets from this demo in that video so I can show you how the brushes work. But in any case, I'm using the shade Valoria, and I don't know, I know some of you out there speak Spanish and it sounds a lot like the word velorio, which for us is wake. So it kind of has a somber feel to me. I'm not sure if it's supposed to be a play on velour, you know, like the texture, but to me it looks like wake, so it's a little bit somber. And the color tone is a little bit somber too, isn't it? Like this sort of muted purpley brown tone. So I'm starting it out the way I do any typical halo eye by applying it to the inside and outside of my eye so that it deposits the greatest depth of color there. I also didn't set the eyeshadow primer at all. I did also run this shade on the lower lash line, just on the inner and outer parts of my eye like a typical halo. Like all Pat McGrath mattes, this is very creamy and very blendable. It's performing beautifully. This would be a beautiful one eyeshadow look as well if you wanted to do something a little more simple. In general, I'm honestly a little irritated at how this launch went through. It was first initially a launch that was limited to Selfridges and I think parts of the Pacific region, and a lot of people found out about it through Instagram. I saw it as well, but through Selfridges, if you want to buy something from there, shipping is $30 to the United States, which is so expensive. And the eyeshadow palette already, I think their pricing was $120. It's slightly different there, and I just couldn't justify doing it, especially since it's a more neutral eyeshadow palette and I have a lot of neutral eyeshadow palettes. Granted, I use them a lot, but it's already so expensive, and then the shipping. So I'm gonna go ahead and use the jumbo blender. I didn't apply any additional product to the brush, and I'm just going to run this along the edges to just diffuse the color upward, and then I'll slightly connect them, but not too much. So you can see already that if this were a color that were all over my lid, it would blow out beautifully. I'm taking the Sonia G Mini Booster and the shade Extreme Mahogany, and that's what I'm going to use to deepen out the inner and outer corners of my eye. So along with the launch, there was rumor of the shadow having repeat shades, and they had just launched the mini quad that was also Divine Rose, and I wasn't sure if there were going to be repeated shades there, and it just seemed that the people who bought it, they acted pretty much on impulse and the collector mentality, which I'm trying to get out of. There's only a couple of brands for which I still have that mentality, Natasha Denona being one, as well as Pat McGrath, and those are pricey brands for me to be having that mindset. So I'm trying to wean myself off of that, and so I resisted the urge to place the order. I have ordered from Selfridges in the past, and their customer service is great. The packaging is really safe, and the products arrive fairly quickly considering that they're coming from overseas. I'm just taking that jumbo blender and blending that upward. So everything arrives really nicely considering it comes from overseas. I've only ordered from Selfridges one time, and that's because I snoozed on a limited edition Guerlain product, which was completely sold out in the States, and it was one of those seasonal launches that I knew I was not going to get unless I went ahead and I ordered it through them. So I bit the bullet and I did that. And in hindsight, I should have probably just signed up for the $50 shipping program that they have, that if you sign up and you pay $50, then you get free shipping for a year, I would say. And considering you have to pay $30 a pop, $50 for a year if you're going to purchase frequently is not a bad deal at all. So if that's something that you were thinking about, if you purchase from Selfridges frequently, then maybe that wouldn't be a bad idea. Although for us here in the US, paying for shipping is just blasphemy. We're so spoiled. Here I'm using the brush that I use, the shade Velouria, and I'm just blending those two colors together. And you can see what a beautiful blend you really get. They're just really easy to work with. I've always really enjoyed her matte shadows. The metallic I'm going to apply in the center is called Lovelace, and it's a really pretty cool toned kind of brown. I'm using it on a Sonia G soft shader, and I'm applying the shade Dry. You can see that the shadow applies beautifully. I do get a small, teeny tiny amount of fallout with this shade, but this brushes away super easily, especially since I set my face makeup and everything literally hours ago. So you can see that creates a really pretty diffused look. I like the way that looks in and of itself already, but I wanted to use more shades so that I can give you an idea of how the palette performed. I'm going to take the same shade and I'm going to apply it on the lower lash line. This is probably the culprit for the fallout, since I'm essentially brushing the brush itself along my lashes, which are kind of long on the lower lash line. I wish my top lashes would be the same. That's really the reason for the fallout. So you can see I have a little bit of fallout here on my nose. It's a very small amount. I'm not sure if you're going to be able to see it, but I know that is easily brushed away. So like I said, this by itself would be a beautiful eye look. Really easy to create as well. That was just 3 eyeshadows. I'm going to use the Sonia G Flat Definer, and that's what I'm going to use to highlight my brow bone. I'm doing it with the shade Skin Show Nude, which somehow it rings a bell. I'm not sure if this is one of the repeat shades. I will definitely look up all that information before I give you my thoughts on the palette itself, so I can let you know which ones are actually repeated, but this doesn't seem that unique of a shade. I'm sure that if you have any Pat McGrath palettes, you have something similar to this already. That being said, it does perform beautifully, and it's very creamy, so you can blend it along the brow bone really nicely. And even though I didn't bring my shadows all the way up, it doesn't really create a line of demarcation, which I really appreciate. I'm going to use this one also as my inner corner highlight. My eyes are small, so even when I do halo eyes, I do like to highlight the inner corner just to open them up just a little bit. And you can see that it creates a really nice highlight there. So taking that jumbo blender, I'm just going to run this along the edges of the look in general, just all along the outside. And I'm just trying to diffuse the edges and blend it. And then I finish the look by applying the shade. It's called Astral Solstice, which is a really beautiful shade. I really like that one when I swatched it. It looks like one of those shades that can make your eyelids get that glassy lid effect. It's really beautiful. Look how reflective it is. Basically, I just tap that to the center of my eye. Unfortunately, you do get a little bit of fallout with this one, so if you wanted to use glitter glue, that would of course help. If you wanted to dampen it, it would also help. But I want to demonstrate the palette as is, so I'm going to apply it. There's the before, and then I'm just going to press this right into the center, and you're going to see how much of a pop that's going to give me. It's actually quite extreme, and I only put it right in the center. When I press it, I can see the flakes of the shadow kind of falling. So it's just something to keep in mind. You can always do your eyes first, and that would minimize any issue. I'm looking at my face right now and I didn't get too much fallout at all. So I'm just gonna brush away the small bits that I have. And actually I got more fallout on the other eye, probably because I wasn't sure what kind of look I was going to do, and so I wasn't as direct with the placement of the shadows. So I did get more fallout on the other side. This side is not bad at all. Now once you already have those shades down, it's really not a good idea to mess around with them anymore, but I do want to blend the edges a little bit, so I'm gonna go in with that Valoria shade, and I'm just going to apply it starting from the outsides. So just to make sure that that crease is defined, and then going along the center just slightly. And there you have the finished look. I'll let you know how I finished it. I used this eyeliner. This is something from Palladio. I must have gotten it in a subscription box because I don't remember buying this. It's a lavender, so it's kind of a grayish purple tone, which I think emphasizes that Valoria shade. I'm never gonna get that name. Every time I see it, I just think, wake, and it's not a positive thought. Anyway, it's a lavender eyeliner, and then I used mascara. Today I'm using the Tarteist mascara by Tarte, and my lipstick, if you're interested, is Velvet Midnight by Lisa Eldridge. I just posted a swatch video of all of the new velvets that she released, and I'm just really enjoying them all. So I'm gonna go ahead, finish off my eye look, and I will be back with my final thoughts. Hopefully you enjoyed seeing how I created the eye look. It's a very easy to use palette. You can get something a little bit more dramatic. Like, I think this is definitely wearable. The lipstick, of course, makes it very dramatic, but in general, it's a very wearable look. Really easy to use palette. I love the Pat McGrath formula. I'm gonna keep collecting them, even though honestly, this one, it rubs me the wrong way a little bit with 3 repeat shades. At first, it was her putting a black in every palette. That was a complaint, but now there are 3 repeat shades. It kind of alienates the regular customers a little bit because obviously we're gonna have all those shades already, and now we're paying full price for not all brand new shades. So it's just something that I would like to see discontinued as a trend in the release pattern for these palettes. But overall, the quality of the palette is really nice, and the shades that are included make it a really nice standalone palette. I'm definitely glad that I purchased the palette, even though it is so pricey. These are sort of like collector's pieces, and they make me feel really good when I use them. When I'm applying my makeup, it's just really pleasant experience, and I love them. The quality is impeccable. So if you are considering picking up the palette and you don't already have all the others, then I definitely think that it's worth it if it's within your budget. Right now, the palette is sold out. I'm not sure if it's going to be coming to Sephora, but there is a note on her website that if you're interested in the palette, to let mother know by signing up, blah blah blah. So sign up for the email alert, and then that way you'll know when there's a restock, because I have a feeling that there will be one. So those are my thoughts on the Divine Rose Mothership eyeshadow palette. I do like it. I don't want to come off totally negative, but I think that it's important to give brands constructive criticism. Not that the brand is going to see my video, but you know, just raise awareness a little bit of ways in which they can improve, and that's one thing that I think will make it a lot better. Also, slowing down on the releases a little bit. We're criticizing Anastasia quite a bit right now for how they're releasing all those Norvina palettes, the 3 big ones, the 2 minis, but you know, Pat McGrath is not far behind, because Midnight Sun, which was the previous palette to this one, was not that long ago, and now we have this one plus 3 minis, and those minis are not affordable by any means, so that's quite a rapid fire of releases there as well. And so it would be nice to get a little bit of a break so we can appreciate and cherish each palette as it comes, because these are definitely cherish worthy. So those are my thoughts. I really like the palette. If you picked it up, let me know what you thought. Let me know what you thought of the release, and anything else you'd like to share with me in the comment section down below. If you did enjoy this video, don't forget to give it a big thumbs up for me. I really appreciate it. It makes me really happy to see that kind of feedback, as well as reading your comments in the comment section. That's everything from me today. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the bell if you haven't already. I hope you're doing really well, and I look forward to seeing you again very soon on my next one. Bye-bye.